This is the AI Brief brought to you by the YPO Technology Network, and I'm Stephen Forte. This is our weekend edition where we put the headlines aside, pick one topic that matters, and go deep. No rapid fire, just clarity on something worth understanding well. This week, stop picking tools and start assigning layers. Something has been following me around this year. I hear it in Milan, and I hear it in Singapore, and I heard it again last month in Chicago. A member pulls me aside after a session and asks what sounds like a procurement question. We are paying for Microsoft Copilot, and we are paying for Claude. Which one should we standardize on? I used to try to answer it. I have stopped because the question does not have an answer. It has a replacement. Let me describe the situation first because I want you to recognize it before I take a position on it. Microsoft 365 Copilot arrived bundled with software you already bought. It felt free. Nobody ran a selection process because there was nothing to select. It is simply there the way spell check is there. Then somewhere in your company, a department got tired of waiting for Copilot to be good at the specific thing they do. They found Claude or they found ChatGPT. They put it on a corporate card. It is now load-bearing for a team of 9 people, and it appears in no architecture document anywhere. You are paying for both. Your people have quietly decided which one they actually use. And the policy that governs any of this exists in nobody's document and everybody's habits. Picture Castellan Group, industrial packaging, 600 people, head office in Milan, and a plant outside Chicago. Entirely invented, and I suspect you know 2 of them. Castellan has Copilot on every desk because it came with the Microsoft agreement. Their commercial team in Chicago bought Claude 11 months ago because they needed to pull apart pricing spreadsheets, and Copilot could not do it. Nobody hid anything. Nobody broke a rule. There was no rule. The managing director found out about the second subscription when it appeared on a cost review. Under a line item, somebody had labeled software. He is now being asked to decide which one they standardize on by people who have already decided. If you caught the episode a few weeks ago on why your AI tools do not share a brain, this is the other half of that conversation. That episode named the problem. Today is the answer, and the answer is not the one most people expect. Before I go further, let me tell you where I sit, because you should discount what follows accordingly. At Build Club, we use all of them. We have Microsoft Copilot. We use Perplexity. We use Claude. Most of our heavy lifting runs on Claude. And we have drifted away from Perplexity Computer for a reason worth telling you, because it is the kind of thing you only find by looking. We ran an audit of our own usage, routing the same work through Perplexity Computer to reach the frontier models was costing us roughly 6 times what it cost to go to Claude directly. Same models. Same work, 6 times. That is our measurement of our own usage, not an industry benchmark. And yours will differ, but it is why our stack looks the way it does. And I would rather tell you that than have you assume I arrived here from theory. Now, here is the part that made me stop arguing with people about which tool is better. Recon Analytics ran a survey of more than 150,000 people in the United States, covering July of last year through January of this one, looking specifically at paid subscribers who have AI available at work. Where an employee has Copilot and nothing else, 68% of them use it. That is healthy adoption. Any of us would sign for 68%, where that same employee has Copilot with 2 alternatives sitting next to it. Copilot takes 8%. ChatGPT takes 70, 68 to 8. Same product, same people. The only variable is whether they had somewhere else to go. One honest note on that survey, it measured Copilot, ChatGPT, and Gemini. It did not measure Claude at all. So I am not going to stand here and tell you it proves Claude wins, because it does not measure Claude. What it measures is what happens to a distribution advantage when the person on the other end gets a vote. The researchers put it more plainly than I would have dared. Distribution advantages do not lock in market position. Read that with your own company in mind. You did not choose Copilot. It came with the building. And your people are evaluating it anyway every day in the only way that counts, which is whether they open it. You cannot mandate preference. Every one of us has learned this before, usually twice, usually expensively. So here is my read, and it took me an embarrassingly long time to get to it. The question, which tool should we standardize on, collapses two completely separate decisions into one. Where do my people think and where does the work land? Those are not the same decision. They have never been the same decision. And once you separate them, the argument that has been eating your leadership meetings just stops. Let me be concrete about what each one is actually good at, because the architecture falls out of it. Copilot can post a message in your Teams channel. Claude cannot. Copilot can attach a file to an email it drafts for you. Claude cannot do that either. And Copilot can start working because an email arrived without a human asking it to. Claude has no way to do that inside Microsoft. Now, the other direction, Claude can write and run code. Copilot cannot. That one sounds technical, and it is the difference between reshaping a messy spreadsheet in 90 seconds and spending 20 minutes explaining to an assistant why the columns are wrong. Almost every time somebody tells me Copilot underperformed and we look at what they were actually doing, they were asking it to compute something. Neither of those gaps is a roadmap item you should wait out. They are different designs on purpose. So here is the shape I would use. 4 layers. I am going to name each one and tell you who owns it. The first layer is the interface. This is where a person thinks, where their projects live, where context piles up over weeks so they are not re-explaining the same client to a machine every Monday morning. There should be exactly one of these per person, and in practice, people converge on their own. And you do not get to pick it. Your people already did. That is what the 68 and the 8 are telling you. The second layer is the hands, mail, calendar, files, SharePoint, the place your contracts actually live. Here is the thing nobody tells you about this layer. It is boring. It is a set of well-documented instructions any authorized system can carry out. Sending a message, booking a room, filing a document, reading who reports to whom. This layer does not care which interface you chose. It never did. Claude can do these. Copilot can do these. They are knocking on the same door with the same key. So when somebody tells you that standardizing on one tool will simplify your integrations, be a little suspicious. The integrations were never the hard part. The third layer is Teams, the channels, the place where a message looks like a colleague talking, because it usually is. This layer behaves differently from the other 3, and it is the most interesting part of this whole architecture. I will come back to it because it deserves its own beat. And the fourth layer is the people who never left. Somewhere between a third and half of your company lives inside Outlook and Teams and is never, ever moving. Not because they are resistant, because that genuinely is their job. They keep Copilot. It is good at precisely the things they do all day. It is already paid for, and moving them would be a cost with no return. That is the architecture. One place to think, one boring layer that does the work. Teams with its own special rules and a large population, you leave exactly where they are. Now, let me come back to Teams, because there is a detail here that changed how I think about the whole problem. You can teach Claude to send email on your behalf. You can teach it to book meetings, file documents, and read your directory. All of that is ordinary, permitted, and roughly a day of work. You cannot teach it to post a message in Teams as itself. That is not a gap. It is not on a roadmap. Microsoft publishes the permissions for this, and for posting a message, there is exactly one permission available to a machine acting on its own account. And it exists for one purpose: migrating old message history in from a system you are retiring. Their own documentation says it plainly. Machine permissions are supported for migration only. Everything else in the building is open. That one door is not. And I've come around to thinking Microsoft is completely right. An email that came from a machine looks like an email that came from a machine. We have all developed antibodies. But a message in your team channel looks like a person. It sits in the same column as your CFO. It carries the same social weight. Microsoft decided Teams needs somebody's name on it. That decision costs them integration convenience. It makes their own product harder to build against, and they made it anyway. Most companies would have quietly opened the door and let the market sort it out. So, how do you actually get Claude's work into teams? Think about how a building works. An outside contractor cannot walk in and pin a notice to the staff board. That is the whole point of the staff board. But an employee can pin whatever they like. So you give one employee a rubber stamp and a standing rule. When an envelope arrives at this slot, stamp it and pin it up. That is the entire workaround. Inside Microsoft, you set up a small automation that a real named person owns. It has an address. Anything sent to that address gets posted to the channel under that person's automation because that person is allowed to post. Claude never posts to teams. It hands the notice to something inside the building that is permitted to. And here is why I like this more than a clever integration would have been. There is a named owner, there is an accountable human. It shows up in your normal governance the way everything else does, and nothing is pretending to be a colleague. That is not a hack around a security control. That is the security control working and the architecture bending to fit it, which is the correct order of operations and almost never what happens. The same door swings both ways. When an email arrives from a particular client, that same little automation can wake Claude up, hand it the work, and let it run while everybody's laptop is closed. The finished thing that comes back through the same rubber stamp and lands in the channel where your team already is. The person who asked never opened a second tool. The people who received it never knew there was one. I owe you one honest limitation before I stop. The moment Claude reads that content, the content has left your Microsoft tenant. That is a real sentence, and I am not going to soften it. Microsoft has newer architectures where it does not leave, and they are genuinely more limited today. You can have one or the other right now. Anyone telling you otherwise is selling. And one more piece of credit where it is due, because it surprised me. Microsoft's own tooling for building these little capabilities will accept a package built for Claude and convert it. You can author something once and run it in both places. That is not the behavior of a company trying to lock a door. Here is what I would do. And this is a decision you make, not a project you fund. Take one page, write down 4 lines. Where do we think? Where does the work land? Where do things get announced? And who stays exactly where they are? 4 answers, 1 page. You can do it before your next leadership meeting, and you do not need anybody's permission. For Castellan, those 4 lines take about 10 minutes. People think in Claude because the commercial team already proved it. The work lands in Microsoft because that is where the contracts and the calendar live, and that is where the auditors will look. Announcements go to teams through something with a named owner, and the plant in Chicago and the finance team in Milan keep Copilot because it is genuinely good at their day, and nobody needs retraining. Nothing on that page requires a migration. Nothing requires a vendor conversation. It is 4 sentences that end an argument. And notice what the managing director does not have to do. He does not have to overrule the commercial team, and he does not have to tell 300 people to change how they work. Nobody runs their whole company inside their accounting package just because that is where the ledger lives. We worked that out decades ago. We put people where they think, and we connected it to where the records go. This is the same problem wearing newer clothes. Your people already answered the tool question. The only thing still open is whether you write it down or keep paying for the version where nobody does. That is the YPO Tech Network AI Brief Weekend Edition for Saturday, August 22nd. I am Stephen Forte. If this found you on a Saturday, share it with a fellow member who could use the perspective. I will be back Monday with more. Until then, stay sharp.